Welcome to Charts Today. My name's David Linton, and today's edition for Monday, the 14th of November, comes to you from London. And I kind of like Monday mornings. I guess, for a lot of people, it's the first day back at work. It's always a bit hard. But for me, I get to see what the markets have done overnight in Asia, what my Australian stocks have been doing. And yeah, so I kind of like Monday, and it's a fresh start to the week. We've had the break of the weekend, and we come back and we see how the markets are reacting. And last week was quite a big week in markets because we had those US inflation numbers, but even before that, we were starting to see trend changes, and perhaps the biggest one is this change in the dollar, which we've been talking about for a little while. Just the fact that we were making lower highs, lower lows, and that 110 level was critical. We took that out, and so that's changed quite a lot for markets, and so that's a really interesting aspect of that. And Monday mornings, I also just tend to go right through my lists, and I've got some big lists that I go through, and I look at the forex, my government bonds, stock indices, and I go really right down through tech majors, energy, base metals, just really in case I've missed anything. And of course, I'm alerted to these changes as well. So this morning I see there's a new upside target, for example, in sugar, some 11% higher, and that target's been. So I watch these alerts that have been generated on my alerts list. And when you download Updata, the Enterprise Edition has all of these pre-configured for you, so you just get the same alerts. So, and you can add to these lists whatever you want. So I've got long term, which happen on my weekly or my 1% point and figure charts. I've got medium term, which happen on my daily and my 0.5% point and figure charts. Short term happen on my 60 minutes, and then my 1 minute charts. And I've got a smaller list in 1 minute. Otherwise, I would just be getting alerts the whole time. And so really I want to get alerts on the longer term charts on a broader range of things, and on the short term charts on the things that I'm really watching much more closely, especially watching for clients, and that tends to be quite heavily in the energy market. But we see here we've got quite a lot of new lists there. So there's a new alert there, a new upside targets for platinum, pointing to the same place, 11.5% higher, which really does suggest, because you've got two targets, that's clustering, it does suggest that that's where we're going to go. But that long list that I was looking at there of all my lists, and I'm looking at all sorts of things like shipping. So for example, Baltic dry freight rates are falling, but the dirty rate is rising and breaking to new highs. So that's really interesting. And a lot of the clients I work with, we look at these charts and then look for stocks within those sectors because we're seeing the drivers breaking out. So that's really quite key. And of course, that relates to monthly global markets reports. So here we see a summary from all the points from October. This is the November report, and we cover all the currencies, the bonds, the stock markets, the major tech stocks, which have been bearish on for months now, energy, base metals, precious metals, and grains and other commodities. And so those reports cover all the different charts and the views for all those long-term assets. So that report is basically just run from the report writer in Updata, and it updates all the charts, and then I just update the commentary. It doesn't take me very long at all, and I do that every month for our top clients. So looking at what's going on in the charts, and I've already looked at several hundred charts this morning just going through my list. This is my long-term, my medium-term, and my short-term view of the market, the weekly, daily, and 60-minute charts, along with the corresponding point and figure targets, so the long term, medium term, and short term. So, for example, on the dollar index, I'm seeing a target still low of some 4.5% lower. Now, we will find a floor here somewhere, and this will show up in the shorter term charts first, but the reality is that for now, this long run in the dollar, which we predicted at the start of the year, is now looking done, and will either go into a long consolidation phase. The very long term trend is still up, but the medium term trend is now breaking, now that we've broken through that 110. So it's understanding the time horizon of what we're dealing with. So a weaker dollar in the weeks and months ahead now looks like a more likely picture. And it'll be interesting to see if we find a floor and generate a new upside price target, and that's something we will be watching for. That means that the euro is looking stronger against that weaker dollar. It's as much about dollar weakness than it is about euro strength. The dollar index, of course, is very heavily denominated with the euro. And if we look at the Japanese yen, the Bank of Japan was intervening at around 150. They must be relieved because they're not going to need to do that now for a while. Finding cloud support for the moment, but it'll be very interesting to see how this chart plays out. Sterling actually looking pretty strong. Sitting at 117.50. The UK budget is on Thursday. All eyes are on what the announcements are going to be there. Already there's been quite a lot of news leaks about strong fiscal policy, which the market is liking. And so we are seeing sterling having a real resurgence. Given that you could have bought sterling at 104 on the back of the mini budget a couple of months ago, now sitting at 119, that's quite a move for a major currency. Against the euro, sitting fairly static at around 114. So again, that sterling rise against the dollar is stronger based on dollar weakness. So that's really quite key. Bitcoin, of course, was another big story last week. And we're very bearish on Bitcoin. We're below the cloud on the weekly and on the daily and on the 60-minute. Bearish on all time frames. Downside target of 15,700 nearly met. New downside target there of 11,000, and we've got a new one not yet activated, but it will be with a new low to 9,000. So realistically, there's a lot of people who bought Bitcoin who must be looking at getting their money out. The S&P 500 index was up 1% on Friday. Of course, we had a very strong bounce last week in the indices. The Nasdaq actually bounced 7.5% on Thursday on those inflation numbers just leapt. So still bearish on the long-term chart, medium term also still bearish, but the short-term chart is bullish. Now on Friday we did do a 30-minute charts today segment where we covered big super cycles, what's really going on in the market. We talked at stocks and bonds, and we looked at that in much more depth. So you can look that up on the YouTube channel, Charts Today, and also I posted a link to it on LinkedIn, so you can watch that if you really want to understand what's going on in terms of the bigger picture of all the charts. The futures today are down. After such big rises last week, we shouldn't be surprised to see moves. We are still on a downtrend, remember, so we sort of saw that big sharp counter trend move, but the reality is it's not yet enough. I mean, interesting that we are seeing on the future there, on the Nasdaq future, a higher low, higher high scenario, so maybe we'll see a little bit of a better week, but the reality is medium and longer term, those trends are still bearish. The FTSE future is up slightly today, so that's quite key. And looking at the DAX in Germany, up another 0.25%, and through the cloud on the daily. But of course, this is the level to watch, around 14,500, and we're not yet back above the cloud. But for the moment, the German market looking better than it has done. Japan was actually down 1%. And the Hang Seng was up 1.7%. This has really been the strongest performer in equity markets in the last week or so, really just bouncing off that 15,000 low. But again, the trends are still down, so it's a move within a downtrend. The Aussie market was down slightly, and India was also down slightly. But that chart's still looking pretty damn good with upside targets there. We'll look at the energy mix in a minute, but looking at some of the soft commodities, we've got wheat lower. Gold is looking weaker this morning, but the reality is that trend is reversing as well, as are other precious metals, and we're seeing bond prices in the US just up as well. Brent crude, the big call is, will we break $100 this week? The $97 level is really the one we have to watch first. If we break that, that's going to be significant. A couple of mini downside targets there emerging on the 1 minute chart. Remembering this is the chart you want to watch if you're trading crude intraday. That $100 mark will only really happen once we can get through 97. And of course, we've tested that level previously. It looks like it will happen. We've got upside targets suggesting that it will, but the reality is we've got to break these critical levels first. US nat gas is actually up quite sharply this morning. We went out as neutral first thing to clients. The picture wasn't that clear. We did have these upside targets. Actually, we went out bullish this morning to clients on US nat gas, and I can check that just by looking at the daily reports. And you'll see here we did actually make the call bullish on US nat gas. So that's looking better. European gas prices up quite sharply. We went neutral because it was very hard to call this morning. And German power still looking very bearish. Remembering our downside target there is much lower than where we are now. That's it for today. Until tomorrow, happy charting. See you then.